Okay, my friends, so step 6. So step 6 is identifying the rhetorical situation. We have all of this data that we've collected so far. We've looked at imagery, we've looked at the use of language, we've identified all the artistic proofs, we've looked at the context. Now let's take a look at the rhetorical situation, which is comprised of 3 parts. The first one that we'll look at is generally the easiest one, which is the rhetorical audience or audiences. So there might be multiple audiences to consider. So with the example of President Bush's address to the nation on September 11th, what the question is who are the people that the rhetor wants to hear their message, right? And so ideally, who is it that President Bush is hoping will receive that message? And I think in this case, there's certainly audiences to consider. So the general public, so the American public at large, so anyone who is a citizen of the United States. Perhaps piggybacking on that, an international community, because as I told you in a previous video, it wasn't just us who were watching the news that day. Certainly the world was wondering what was going on in America and how we were going to react to what had happened. The address, certainly it could be argued that it was being directed to policy and lawmakers. You know, as we're all aware right now within the COVID crisis, lawmakers are working overtime, and very often an address like this might be a signal to those people in political power to open up their purse strings and start dishing out some money and resources so that the nation can continue on. And I think within the transcript of the speech itself as well, I'm going to scroll up here just to point this out. This isn't kind of a half-baked idea because we can see it. Our financial institutions and the American economy will be open for business as well. And so that's kind of heading off the path of the fears of things starting to shut down. You know, certainly there was a significance to the World Trade Center buildings being the ones that were hit. You know, that was a direct hit to the nation's economy. Downtown in New York is where the New York Stock Exchange is, so there's a tie there, as well as the connection to the Pentagon and the defense of the United States. Oh my gosh, look I'm all over the place here. Okay, so scrolling back down, sorry. So the exigence, this is, I don't know, I'd always get students kind of wound up. It's not that big of a deal. This is the moment that compelled the rhetor to speak. It's really not that difficult. And it says here what does it say? I thought it said something about whatever, it doesn't say that. So this is the moment that compels the rhetor to speak. Obviously, we've defined these moments several times within our dialogue today. The Twin Towers being hit by a plane, the Pentagon being hit, the plane that went down in Shanksville, all of the lives that were lost, that was the exigence. So that one's pretty easily defined. And then constraints. So constraints, you know, just think outside of the box a little bit, but anything that can interfere with the message. So here's kind of what I have to say something, right? And so the rhetor is somewhere in here, and I need to talk to this audience, but what can stop that message from getting here? So that could be a language barrier. So anyone who's not a speaker of American it would be restricted to them. So hopefully there's a way to get translations of that out to different audiences. You know, folks who sign to speak, that might inhibit them from getting it. If they had some sort of hearing or visual impairment, that might also be a constraint. Not having a television could be a constraint. Not having access to a cable or to the channels that this was on, but believe me, it was on every channel. Stopped all programming that night. So just having a television was pretty much guaranteed that you were going to hear this message in that moment. being a constraint, like noise, we've talked about this before, could just be internal noise. I mean, people just being so upset with the situation, maybe having lost someone. I know personally, my brother was in Manhattan on September 11th. I was beside myself. I was so upset and really very anxious that day. So that type of internal noise could also be a constraint. Let me see if I listed anything else here. If there's no cable, potential, no, perhaps time constraints. So obviously we're not all on the same time network. So if you were located somewhere else, you might be sleeping or just not able to watch television in that moment. So those could all be considered constraints. So that's it for step 6. Let's move on to step 7.